Hi, this is Christopher Schneider, and I am joined by one of the Hall of Famers
Oh
of our
boy.
American educators, David Berliner, Dr. David Berliner. Uh, Pardon me, Dr. But I'm going to give you a quick introduction. He is the Regent Professor of Education Emeritus at Arizona State University. He has taught on 3 different continents. He is the winner of the Brock Award, the American Educational Research Association Award, and the Friend of Education Award by the NEA. He's also the co-author of Manufactured Crisis. It's so big I had to pick it up with 2 hands. And he's a fellow Bruin. How are you, Doctor?
Hi. Good, Christopher. Good to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get right to it. What does it mean to be a teacher in 2020?
Well, let's go back to 1930 in order to answer that. At that time, if you knew your subject matter and you got up front and recited it, and kids got it or didn't get it, you were done. You met the job requirements. Um, so geometry or literature or diagramming sentences, if you did that, you were a good teacher. It didn't matter what kids learned. Okay, along the way, we realized that we really ought to be checking on what kids learn from all this. And so the testing movement started and showed us that a lot of kids weren't learning stuff. And teachers along the way, from let's say 1930 to maybe 1950, there were transitions into teachers more as, I don't want to use the word social worker, but I don't know a better one to use. Kids were needy. And you just can't teach when a kid is hungry. So the school had to provide lunches and free lunches. The teachers had to meet with parents and talk about how to raise children. And teachers had to take on more of a child psychologist role, maybe. And now high school teachers less so, but certainly elementary teachers had to change from content to more social work oriented. In junior high in between, we worried about adolescents. High school teachers didn't change much at all, but high school changed a little bit, but the teachers were still content oriented.
So today, what would be the traits of professionalism that you would like to see in new educators?
Well, I'd like to be sure that they've had enough um, content training so that they can actually teach reading in some sort of scientific way. I don't think the reason I say sort of scientific is we have a science of learning. We have proven methods. None of them will work as prescribed in a class of 30 kids, many of whom are poor and come from homes that are hungry or this sort of thing. So I'd like teachers to have the science of learning down with the full understanding that just because they have that, that's not going to make them a great teacher. They have to have other qualities, including the ability to relate to the kids. And it's very hard to learn from someone you don't like or someone who you think is tough, or in this day and age, someone who you think is prejudiced because you're black or Chicano. It's very hard to learn from such a person.
So what are some of the things you'd like to see teachers do to advocate for students and for families in need, like you mentioned?
Well, I would, I mean, the notion that we pay teachers for 9 months or something seems silly. I knew teachers who before school, the 2 weeks before school, visited the homes of every kid they were going to get in that fall. Well, that strikes me as very sensible. I do, when schools have half days, they often do in-service training. I would make those half days where teachers go back and visit families and talk about their kids. Um, uh, I don't know if you grew up with an auntie who took care of you or an uncle who took care of you. I grew up in a family where others were interested in you, and an uncle would whack you in the head or give you $10 if you got an A. What we need are relationships between teachers and families that have those characteristics. We're there for the kids. My wife did a study of a school, a bilingual school, and one of the teachers was really nasty to a kid. And my wife questioned the teacher. He's sometimes late. His parents don't seem to care. He doesn't always get his homework done. And went on. So my wife looked up the family. Well, it was a single mother from the other side of town who was lying to get her kid in a good school. So she was bringing the kid every morning. So they were late sometimes. And the mother was a working mother. And, anyway, the point was the teacher completely misunderstood what the life circumstances of the kid were. And it was a lesson to us that teachers need to know those life circumstances. I studied expert teachers, and I spent pretty close to a decade trying to find expert teachers and talking to them and watching them and filming them and doing experiments on them. And they're really quite remarkable. And this one guy was, I think it was like a fifth grade class, and he was teaching the solar system. And he had the kids, one kid had a big sign called the sun, and he just stood in the center of the classroom. And another kid was Mercury and Saturn and the Earth, and they were around him at different spaces and revolving. They were walking around the classroom. And he was trying to teach about a fifth grade class. He was teaching the solar system, and it went on. It was just a beautiful lesson. And I said to him, I said, that was really a terrific lesson. He said, yeah, you should have seen me the first time. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the first year I taught the solar system, nobody understood a word I was saying. Everybody got everything wrong. So I made notes that when I teach it again, try something different. And he said, the second year I bombed also, but it was a little better. In the third year, I figured out that this would be the way to do it. By the fourth year, I had this great lesson on the solar system. And it turned out my experts kept notes of lessons that bombed. Okay, almost all of them had a note that said, when you're teaching two-column addition with regrouping, don't do this again. So when a teacher only gets one shot at it per year, and then they have to wait a year to try it again. A batter, a football player, a golfer can keep doing it till they get the swing right, okay? So a teacher has, if you're going to be a teacher, I would say journaling at the end of lessons so that you can look at that journal the year after and say what you did wrong and what you did right, so that the third year you'll be a good teacher. That's
very good advice.
Well, it's my lesson from the experts. They were the ones who told me, and I mean expert. This was a remarkable group of people. So anyway, now you have some colleagues you're working with too, right?
Yes, yeah. This is a clinical group, so I'll present this interview in a group setting later this week, and then I'll use a portion of it for our weekly project.
Okay.
But we're all different subjects, but we all have in common to study to become an extraordinary teacher. And the head of the department that we're in is tremendous. His name's Christian Zankoff.
Okay. Well, you George Mason University?
George Mason.
Okay. Okay. Well, I welcome to the profession.
Thank you.
I kind of stumbled into it. I was an experimental psychologist, and I had done one research study that had some educational implications. And so I applied to be an experimental psychologist at Stanford, and they turned me down. But because I had done that one study in education, they passed my papers over to the School of Education as a courtesy. And the School of Education took me. I'd never applied to it. And, you go to Stanford, you look at the arches, you look how pretty it is, you say, oh, what the hell, I'll go here,
Yeah.
So I became an educational psychologist, and I've never been unhappy because the chance to use my scientific training as a psychologist to help people, to help the schools, that's just a wonderful chance. The chance to be a teacher, so many students I've had. So welcome to the profession. It beats the hell out of anything else. You just won't make a lot of money.
I think everyone's aware of that and willing to put forth the effort just to help society.
It's very honorable, and that's important too, to be able to look in the mirror in the morning. So, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Doctor. Thanks so much.
Okay, give me
I'll
one
stop the
second.
recording and then we can talk a little more.